This podcast is brought to you by The Shift.
It's story time!
Okay, so we are recording. So hello and welcome to the Storytime Podcast. My name is Claire. I'm Clisare on the internet. This is the Storytime Podcast where people come on and share their best stories. This podcast is supported by Patreon, thanks to today's Patreon sponsor, also by Skillshare and Audible. If you want a 3-month trial to Skillshare or you're in the market for a 1-month trial to Audible with a free audiobook, please go down to the description down below on YouTube and in the show notes on the audio platforms and use our links because it really helps me out to keep this show on the road. And today we have Thomas Fanning back again. Number three. You just can't get enough of it.
And no, nervous about this one though, but yeah, should be all right. But I like that you did the read at the start there because you cut the read last time. Your Amazon read was on last time.
I had to literally cut it in half or more because you just went on an Amazon rant.
That should be a gift to the patrons, not like the hidden read. Like
that's a really good idea. I will actually do that.
You know.
Okay, there you go, Patreons. You're gonna get the unedited Fange Audible rant.
If you like Clisare and you like Amazon, you'll love this.
So what is the story you're here to tell us today?
Well, you're not going to do the usual stuff?
Oh, sorry. Would you like to tell people where to find you on the internet?
Oh, no, just I actually was thinking about this. Well, don't bother. I don't put anything up on my social media. It's actually like I realised today that you'll probably see more of me occasionally in Claire's Instagram posts about tag rugby than you will see content of mine. So it's there. Yeah, I think the last thing I tweeted was complaining to RTE about fake crowd noise, so it's just not working.
Yeah, so we play tag rugby together, which is a non-contact form of rugby. And yeah, I don't think you've posted since you were on the podcast last, and you said you promoted your Instagram and said that the last thing you posted was from a trip like a couple of weeks before that, and I don't think you posted anything since.
Yeah, exactly. No, what I meant was, though, you're not going to tell everyone that you initially were going to get me on for the Fangirl podcast, and I was going to do that because I'm such an inspiration. You're such a fan of mine, and then you brought back Storytime because the last two guests.
Jealous.
The last two guests I listened to your man who went to the swingers hostel today, and the other guy I can't remember. So bad.
Oh my god! So you listen when it goes up on audio. You don't wait for the video.
It just came up today, and it was
love it.
So I listened to.
You are a true fan and friend.
Was it Dave today?
Sean,
and then the gay elf. What was his name?
Chris.
Oh, Chris is Ammon. Yeah.
Chris
cool. They were both good stories. I really liked really good stories. I enjoyed them. Yeah. Get them back.
But you're mad because I wasn't going to have you on the Fangirl podcast.
Yeah, but you're just doing that because, you just wouldn't give me that. That's why. It's not.
What would I be a huge fan of? Like,
me?
What? But like, I don't even know what you do. Like, you've tried to explain to me a million times and I couldn't explain it to anyone else.
Oh, you mean in work? I think generally.
That too.
I have a big carbon footprint. I'm actually glad I got a little joke in there because I think it's going to be a depressing episode. So if you're here for the laughs, hit stop now. So I've come on to talk about the fact that I have ADHD, and I only found out I had ADHD in January this year. So I'm not even 12 months into my, realization or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of how I got to that, and I think the previous episodes I did, we talked about the Vipassana, which again, and ayahuasca, and I think part of that was like me trying to discover something about myself, which I think maybe I've finally got an answer to, or maybe I've got more clarity on. So that's what we're here to talk about.
So what made you go and figure out, like, how do you get diagnosed? Why did it make you? How did you figure that out? When did you go? What happened?
Yeah, so God, there's a lot to. So basically, the kind of background on it is that I've just from the time I've been in school, I always struggled. I've always struggled with my career. I dropped out of college twice. I wouldn't have considered myself a stupid person, but yet I was like massively underachieving in these things that I felt were important, and I wasn't able to get anywhere with them. So I always just thought it was like, I just need to find a career I care about. And I did do things that I cared about, and I still would run into the same problems time and time again. So eventually it was actually on the back of the ayahuasca experience, I decided to give seeing a therapist to go again, because I tried a couple of times in the past. It just hadn't worked out for me. So I decided to go again. And then maybe it was probably like 3 or 4 years later after that, after starting going to therapy, stopping and then going back to therapy, in I think it was maybe October last year. I got to a point where I wasn't drinking. I was sleeping well. My personal space was organized. I was doing like everything. I was exercising. I was doing like everything they tell you to do to like be a bit more applied person. And I was still running into trouble in work. I was still running into trouble.
And you quit drinking as well at this point, didn't you?
Quit drinking, yeah.
Because I remember this health kick. Yeah.
And this was like drinking was like the last step. Like I'd been doing it. Like all the other stuff had been happening. So I was like literally.
Doing everything you're supposed to be doing, and you weren't seeing the results.
Yeah, everything was supposed to be doing wasn't seeing the results. So then the psychotherapist I was seeing, we were talking about this one day, and I was like at a really low ebb about it. And one of the things that came up was that I'm, and you probably would notice this, nobody knows this really, unless they've actually seen me physically write, is that I'm a terrible speller.
Really?
Like I can speak quite well, and I can get my point across on paper. But if you actually see, like sometimes Google can't even figure out what the fuck I'm trying to say. Like it's not even close to what the word is. Like it's and I've always been like that, but I've always.
And just out of curiosity, sorry, and this might be a stupid question, but I'm just curious because we text a lot.
Yeah.
Do you just rely on autocorrect, or like the actual phone to correct you? Because I've never noticed this from you.
Yeah, I because I'm so aware of it, I'm super careful to check.
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
sorry, keep going. Yeah.
Well, no, and actually interrupt me loads. So I don't actually have like a story like last time. So we just have to ask.
The whole thing is a story. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking about the spelling was really bad, and I read a lot. So that's kind of like that's kind of the first thing. If someone's a poor speller, they'd go, well, they don't read enough. And I read, and especially when I was a child, like I read books constantly. As an adult, I read a lot, and not just audiobooks. I know we were saying that last time, but I read all the time, and I just can't spell. And so she suggested that I go see an educational psychologist. So she gave me a name of a person to contact. I rang her. I think I sent her an email, and then she sent me her number and said, "Oh, can you ring me and talk to me?" And so I spoke to her on the phone for 20 minutes, and we talked about what was going on. And her kind of thing at the end, she goes, "Look, there's probably a reason why you can't spell, but if you don't have trouble articulating yourself, like if you have an idea in your head and you can write it down, you'll probably just end up spending a lot of money to get a diagnosis that you're already coping with." So she was like, "But from talking to you, it really sounds to me like you might have ADHD."
Really? Just from on the phone with you?
On the phone. She goes, "It really sounds to me like you might have ADHD." And I was like, okay. And I actually regretted not sending her a card. She didn't, like, I spoke to her on the phone for 20 minutes, and like having gone to psychotherapy for a couple of years, it's all time is money. And she, like, 20 minutes on the phone, didn't want anything. And then at the end of it was like, "Look, you can come in if you want, but I actually think it's a different problem." And she goes, "I actually don't specialize in ADHD, so you're gonna have to go back to someone else." So I had to. So then she said it to me, and then it was.
And how long did it take you to act on that?
I was at my wit's end at this point. Like I was like, we might get into it. Like I was like so frustrated with life at this point. Like this is just, I was again, like I just, all like, so like, well, yeah, we'll come back to that. Cause I basically I was at my wit's end, and I might talk a bit more about that in a while, but basically so I went back to the psychotherapist, and then she said, "Okay, well," she goes, "I can't refer you to a psychiatrist. You're gonna have to go see your doctor." So I went to my doctor, and then in the meantime, I started reading about it, and I was like, "Fuck!" Like it was like I'd heard of ADHD before. I'd never considered I'd have it, but as soon as I started reading about it, I was like, "Oh my god! Like this is me! Like this is like so many of the things I did were like," and it's actually starting to annoy me now. Or so like typical ADHD traits, like an obvious one. I used to drink an insane amount of caffeine, like 9 cups a day.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was waiting to see the psychiatrist, I was reading all about this, and it was like kind of dawning on me that this was what it was. And I was actually getting like, I was so angry because I was like, how the fuck did I go through school for like so many years? And like, because it was a classic thing, it was called, "Oh, you have the ability, you have to try harder." I heard that like from the time I started having trouble in school, I'd say around 4th class. So from that point on, I was just hearing that all the time. And then I went to see the psychiatrist, had a chat with him. Luckily, I'd actually done loads of the stuff that he would make me do. Like, so I'd already done the ADHD test, and I had my score. And then he talked to me. So, like, the end of like the first meeting, he goes, "You can never say conclusively," but he goes, "I'd be certain you have it." And then we talked about options. So he was like, he prescribed me I was kind of anxious about it at first, but I took it there on the day. He prescribed me a drug called Tyvence, which is a stimulant, so to help you concentrate. And then I started taking that in January, and like my life was 180. Like,
so I totally expected you to say, "Is it Ritalin?"
Ritalin is the
It's
other
like
one.
the famous one.
Ritalin is the
Or the
Ritalin's the
well-known.
more common one.
Yeah.
And
So interesting. So is there do you know why he gave you that one rather than
he,
the one I've heard of? You know.
So there's a couple of things. So he prefers that one. He just thinks
Okay.
it's better results. There's less side effects with it.
Okay, good.
And he also, he just. So the thing is, there's lots of different ADHD medications. So quite often someone will be given one and it doesn't work, so then they try another one. And they try
Oh,
another one.
okay. I totally didn't realize that.
Yeah, and then the other one, which I'm not quite dealing with yet, but the other one is you can adjust to them and then they stop working. So over time they stop, and then you have to try a different one.
Oh.
Because I went from I think it's more to do with that I'm big. It's not that I have like the best ADHD, but
Competitive.
I went from like the 30 ml dose, which is the weakest, to the 70 ml dose within about 6 months.
Okay.
Because the first day I took the 30s, or not, it was actually the second day where I was on the 30s. I'll never forget it. I was in work and I started working on something at 12 o'clock, and I was allowed to leave at 4 on that day because I had a course on in the evening. And I looked at my watch and it was 20 past 4 and I had not stopped working. I had just I'd skip lunch, I'd skip my afternoon snack, things like I love food, things I never do. And I had literally just
Been really focused.
and it wasn't even something that interesting, like, because sometimes we would get hyper focused on things that like were interesting. This was just like a report for work, and I was just like in the zone. And then I was like, is this how everybody works? I was like, this is insane. Like, how have I been getting by for so long? Now it turns out that's not how everybody works. That was like because I quickly adjusted.
Yeah, it was a bit of an overdose.
Yeah, it was like almost like it was almost too much, because like, yeah, I would have eventually starved to death had I got on that one. And actually that's the psychiatrist said that to me. He was like, one of the risks is weight loss. And I was like, look, I have a very practical relationship to food because I eat so much of it. Well, no, I just do. If I don't if I don't get my 4,000 calories, I'm like fading away. So I kind of have to be like regimented with my meals. So so that was fine. But yeah, so now it's more like I'm on the 70s. Now it's more like if I sit down and start doing something, I can concentrate. But it's not a case of if I'm like, yeah, it's getting started.
But you
it's
can also
tricky.
still relax, presumably. Like,
Yeah. Well, I see. This is one of the other things, which was kind of like, and again, see, this is the problem with the thing with the ADHD is that like it leads to, or it can go hand in hand or cause a lot of other like kind of mental health issues. So I would have suffered pretty badly from depression, and a lot of it would have been rooted from that. And this is something I only realized in the last maybe 2 years, is that like I'm quite anxious, and I never thought of myself like that, and it's kind of I don't really ever relax. Like I'm always kind of like very like tense. And even like I went for a massage yesterday, and the masseuse, she was like, okay, I need you to relax your arm. No, relax your arm. No, relax. And I remember another physical therapist used to go, it was actually the girl who got me on the ayahuasca trip. She'd be always like, stop helping me. Like, she'd be trying to move my arm and she'd be like, stop. And I
you can't help
just
yourself.
can't help it. Just can't. Like, so all those things kind of go hand in hand with it. I don't know.
How has it changed your life since you got this diagnosis? Because you're what? What age are you, if you don't mind me asking?
38.
That's
so
like, it's a
37 when I got it.
late enough diagnosis in life.
Yeah, very late. It was just a case of like I got to this point like where it was like, so another standard classic ADHD trope is like broken relationships. So sorry, because that was the thing. I think I missed that point, was that like, so when I first realized that I might have it, I was so pissed off. Like I was so angry about school and everything. But then when I actually got it confirmed, it actually was like a weight off. Like it was just like, I was like, okay, there's not something wrong with me. There is something wrong with me, but there's something that's like, it's treatable and it's manageable and it explains a lot. It's not like,
I have an answer.
Yeah.
I finally have an answer for what's been.
I have an answer, and now I can think of strategies to like cope with it. So I was like, so anyway, see the way I'm jumping around. This is like, I actually did take my meds today, but this is the way my brain goes anyway. So, yeah. So like a classic thing was like there's broken relationships. So like I'd had like 2 relationships that made it more than 3 months. Like it was like almost like a started relationship and almost like a clock would go off, and it was like within 3 months this would be done. So that was a big problem. I'd always struggle in work. Like particularly, it was okay if I was in jobs where I was like things were changing a lot, I was okay, or there was like crises, I was okay. But if it was like, if the job got into a routine, I was screwed. Like totally like fucked. Like because it'd be something I know how to do, and I would just not do it. Like and then like things like which you probably get pressure from the ayahuasca stuff. Like even things like substance abuse. Like I was never a drug addict, but I would have smoked weed very habitually, which was probably me self-medicating. And then even things like just looking for novelty. So that would have led to me like on like weekends, like going out and like taking drugs and stuff, because and these were all like classic ADHD things. So it's kind of like, so all that started making sense to me. And then it's just like, as I say, it did kind of almost become kind of annoying, where I was like, God, I'm so typical. Like, it's like, so like, even like,
it's so obvious now. How did nobody see it?
But nobody knew about it as well. Cause I remember before I got the official diagnosis, I went to meet with my godmother, because I just wanted to, like, I knew, like, when I was younger, an uncle had suggested to my mum that I might have been dyslexic, and she got
annoyed.
Took it really personally. So I kind of went to just meet with Helen, because I didn't want to talk to my parents about it until I knew what the story was. So I kind of went and talked to Helen, and I just asked her. I was like, look, I was always seen as a bright child, but yet I did terribly in school. Like, did nobody like question that, or did no one like think like, what's going on here? And she didn't really have an answer for it. Like, see, and then the other thing as well, which I think it was very good at like presenting that I was doing better than I was, particularly with my parents. Like I told my parents, I remember my junior cert, I told my parents a D or better was an honor. So they thought I got all honors.
Oh my God. You were obviously the oldest child in your house. There's no way a younger child would ever have gotten away with that.
But so that was that. But so I asked
that's
about
smart. Gotta give it to you.
Well, this is the thing. Like, this was where I was when I was at my wit's end with like the therapy sessions. This was the thing. I was like, I'm either smart, or there's a thing called the Dunning-Kruger Effect, which is a psychological phenomenon.
Okay.
Right. So the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Now this could potentially ruin your life.
Okay.
I'm not joking. So the Dunning-Kruger Effect is a principle that if you are bad at something, you'll recognize this from tag and stuff. If you're bad at something, I'm not saying you're bad at things, but you'll recognize people like this.
Okay.
So if you're really bad at something,
yes,
you're actually so bad that you can't properly like appraise your own level of ability.
Yes.
So you'll often overestimate how good you are. So,
gotcha.
So like the classic would be someone who's a really bad driver and is so bad they're completely
but
oblivious
they're
to the other cars.
super confident how good they are.
Yeah, they just don't see like their
mistakes. Yeah.
So I was at this point where it was like, and I remember saying this to the doctor when she was referring me to a psychiatrist. I was going like I'm either an idiot or like this is like the most extreme case of Dunning-Kruger effect where I'm actually a total mouth breathing moron, and I'm just so stupid that I can't see it. And I remember she looked at me and she's like, the fact that you just articulated that to me might tell me that you're not an idiot. And I was like, yeah, okay.
I was one of the first, I think, probably when your mates that you told.
Yeah.
I was among the first.
So yeah, I did tell you pretty early. I told like close friends basically. I didn't tell everyone. But then I've kind of got into this place now where I do, particularly people from school or people I worked with in the past, maybe not people I work with, but definitely people from school where I tell them about it. I almost feel like I'm apologizing when I tell them. It's like, oh yeah, it turns out I wasn't a fucking dope in school. I just couldn't concentrate. And that was kind of one of my, when we were talking about doing the podcast, that was one of kind of my motivations. Was like, I actually just don't want. Look, now if I do the podcast and it comes out, then I don't even feel like people have to know. People will find out or they won't find out. It doesn't really matter. It's like I'm not the gatekeeper to people knowing
this
about
information anymore. Yeah,
which was important to me. And then the other thing, this really blew my mind, is that like a number of my friends now think they have like one of my friends. I think I texted you this during the week. One of my friends got diagnosed obviously won't name, like 2 days ago, and he's actually getting Ritalin. He's doing the Ritalin option. And that was on the back of like initially talking to me and like this kind of like opening thing in his own consciousness. And I was faux getting indignant about it because it was like, you're all trying to steal my bandwagon. But something that occurred to me is that like something I've really noticed is, so some of the people of my friends who think they might have it, one thing I've noticed is they're the people who I tend to get on with or tend to find my kind of sense of humor funny.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that like some weird, like, because I kind of all over the boards, I'm quite scattered with my stuff. And is that like, do they find that funny because that's how their head works as well?
Maybe.
Like one of my best friends, and it's actually funny, he definitely didn't think he had it. And he was actually kind of skeptical about it. And it was only 2 months ago, I was talking to him and he was like, he was saying he thinks he have it. And I was like, oh, I thought you didn't believe it. And he goes, no, you sent me that test and it took me 4 goes to do it. And I was like, something's wrong. But I'd say he's worse than me. Like, you know, not worse than me, but I think he definitely has it. Like, and I think, but we very similar like sense of humor. And I definitely find him way funnier than anyone else does. And I hope he finds me funny, but you know what I mean? So I wonder, was there like some connection there, like a little bit?
Maybe.
And then the other reason why I wanted the podcast was that I was like, you know, maybe one of your people sees this and they kind of maybe it unlocks something in them, because like, as I say, like this is like, I was in a very like kind of lonely and frustrated place for like a very long time, and it's not the panacea, but a big key for unlocking this was getting this diagnosis and getting these meds
and figuring out how to deal with it.
Yeah, totally.
And how is the situation with work? So, have you told work?
No.
Do you want to talk about it?
No. Well, I hope no one from work sees it, but I don't really care if anyone from work sees it. But like it's kind of one of those things. If someone from work saw it and used it against me, it's pretty low. I know what you're thinking. Don't do it. But yeah. So what was great with work was that I was actually I had been struggling in work, and again, things just weren't working out for me, and I changed roles at the start of the year, almost coincidentally coinciding with getting the diagnosis and getting the meds. And now I think the new role would have suited me better anyway. But like my boss now thinks he's a genius because he thinks he's unlocked it. Like he thinks, because I was nominated for an award last night in work. Like
oh my God, congratulations.
I didn't win. But like,
well, congratulations on the nomination anyway.
Only time I ever won an award in work was the Office Bake Off in the Journal, and I didn't bake the cake. I just lied and said I did. Which I can now admit to, because I've now actually achieved something in work myself. That was so funny, because how did I not know? It was
shop bought, was it?
No, it was actually the girl I was seeing at the time was a really good baker, but it was 6 layers rainbow cake, and it was just before the marriage equality referendum. Like, so you cut into it, and it was like, it was amazing.
There's
and
no way you made that. Yeah.
No, I was there when it was made. Like, but I did nothing. Turned on the dough mixer thing. Like, I was like, and everyone in work believed it. Like, they were all like willing to believe that lie. I was like, God damn it. But yeah. So they my boss, like, it was funny because that was one thing the psychiatrist said to me. He goes, see, can you notice, like, people, do they notice changes about you? And because of lockdown, things have been different. But
yeah, because I have barely seen you. Like, yeah.
But my boss rang me in like.
And are you still working from home, or are you?
Yeah, full time from home. I was going in one day a week.
So that's actually even harder to concentrate at home.
Much harder. I think I would have been sacked if I hadn't got.
If I had figured this out.
Yeah, but my boss, it's funny. He rang me in like, it was April or May, and he was like, he literally said, he goes, I've never seen a turnaround like this. He says, you're like a different person, and like he didn't know, like he just thinks you've got me doing the right thing, which obviously is definitely helping, but it's like it's also somewhat aided with that. And I'm worried I'm going to be like Lance Armstrong now. In a couple of years, they'll find out I was like cheating the whole time. They'll take back all my yellow jerseys and be taken off the wall.
They'll make ADHD medication like illegal. And you'd be like Maria Sharapova. So it was legal at the time.
But that's in the Silicon Valley world, in the tech world. Like, I know a guy who works in Google, and he takes ADHD meds from time to time just to focus on his work.
Oh my God.
Yeah, do you not know about that?
No.
It's a really, really common thing. Like, because
Wow.
They're really like, I feel like the pharmacy, I live in Dublin 8, and the pharmacy I go to obviously has a lot of people on like, you know, methadone and other kind of replacement things. So they have a safe with the good stuff. And whenever I go to pick up my like very mild stimulants, they have to go and open the safe because it's a controlled.
No way, they're in the safe.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so, come here. We've been talking since you got this, and I was like, I think I have it.
Yeah, bandwagon.
And your joke is, I'm trying to steal your thunder. But you said something a while ago. You were like, I'll keep it for the podcast. What was that about?
One thing that I because I've read a lot about it now, obviously, and there's a really good book by a guy called Gabor Mate called Scattered Minds. And one of the things that's really common with people who have ADHD is addictive tendencies. So that's the obvious things are like, so I would have smoked weed for a long time, and that was probably, again, trying to self-medicate. But it doesn't like, say everyone thinks addictive tendencies, they think like drugs, but it's actually like...
Caffeine could be the one. We talked about caffeine.
But in Gabor Mate's book, he talks about he was addicted to buying classical CDs and records, and he was getting like he said he was buying like sometimes 7 or 8 a day and not listening to them. He was just getting this dopamine hit every time he bought them. And I definitely like, I have my poor, unfortunately I didn't age very well, but I've like thousands of CDs in my attic, and I've like now my vinyl collection, which I've moved on to not a hipster, Claire. But
I love how you just get that in there.
yeah, but even when I did like, and that's actually we should talk about that more. Like when I did music, like that was one thing I used to buy guitar effects pedals like all the time, and it was just that was such a big hit for me. But something I've noticed with you is that you
I know what you're gonna say.
buying the sports gear,
Yeah.
and I actually think that might be. No, I don't.
Since I've gone self-employed, I've had to really stop myself. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't 7 items a day, but I was definitely like, I love buying sports
Yeah, and you get that dopamine
clothes
hit,
and
like,
kit, and I get that dopamine hit exactly. Yeah.
Now, we're not going to diagnose you on the thing today, but
But also, I'm arguably addicted to tag as well, tag
Yeah.
rugby. So there you go. There's another one.
And novelty, you like doing new stuff, like
I do.
So yeah,
And like, I work really well to deadlines. I don't really work like, as in, if they're like your deadline's in 3 months, I'm like, oh great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
But if it's today, I'll be like, I'll just 8 hours solid, like get it knocked out.
the deadline thing is interesting because like this was a thing where, particularly, I remember when I was telling my family about it, like the ADHD stuff. A lot of what you're dealing with is very relatable. It's like procrastination or like turning it on when the deadline hits. It's just that it's like that, but way worse, like just way worse, and it's that all the time. And there is lots of people who have ADHD who are like quite high achieving and have done quite well, and like people who've like studied medicine while having it and stuff. Like Gabor Mate was a medical doctor, and then he went back and did psychiatry like without knowing he had ADHD. He found out like very late in life, like, and so that could be a sign of ADHD. It just could be a sign you're like a lot of people. It really depends like how much.
Yeah, exactly. Because some of it could be just totally normal behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, because everybody procrastinates, and almost everybody will get that rush when they get close to a deadline.
And everybody like at some point will tune out if they're talking to someone who's not interesting. Like it's just if it happens to keep repeating.
Yeah, and it's when it becomes a problem, and that was the thing for me was that it was like I'd start these courses and drop out, and the thing that really struck me when I started courses, and this used to really bug me, like almost every course I've ever done up until I've actually gone back to college now again, and I'm doing actually better, but almost every course I've done, like the first project, I would like knock it out of the park. Like I remember when I did music and media, like that was my second time starting college, but like that was when I was like when the proper age was 18 or 19. Like I remember the first project we did. Like I remember classmates of mine coming up to me and asking me about it. It was so good. And then I don't think I did another project. I think that was like it was almost because it was so novel, the first one, that I was able to just like throw myself into it and like work really well.
And I wonder, modules are done in 12-week batches, and you mentioned 3 months before. So I wonder, is that like a time frame for you?
That wasn't just ADHD. That is a real common ADHD trait, but there was more to it.
Of course. Yeah, no, I just meant like maybe that the first module you were like this exciting, and then after that you're like, oh, now I'm bored.
Yeah, I think it's like, so I know because you talked about this, you found this bit quite interesting, the hyper focus where you almost kind of go at times go the other way.
Yeah,
and that would happen to me, and I think that was what would happen. I'd be in a new course, and it was also, I think this is a really kind of sad admission, but it was also partly motivated by the fact that like I almost wanted to impress all these new people, so I was like, I'm going to do this so well, and like. Yeah. And then, of course, that doesn't carry on to the next one.
Yeah.
and it's the thing, and that's another thing that used to really frustrate me is that I was like, I used to say all the time, like, I'm super competitive. Like, why can't I apply that competitiveness to like academia or apply it to work? Like, why can I only apply it to like a social tag game on a Tuesday night?
Yeah.
Like,
it was just before I did I did a video where I took an ADHD test. Did you sent me on that ADHD test actually? Yeah. And then that's how I got the idea for that video. And then, so ever since then, we've been kind of talking about you coming on the podcast and telling this story.
And how did you do in the ADHD test? Can you remember? I thought you were more yeses.
I link it, but I can't remember off the top of my head what I got on it.
You were definitely more yeses.
No, I definitely was, yeah.
But
then again, I don't know if it's particularly accurate just to do the one on the internet. Like, you should probably go in. Actually, and they tweeted the other day, ADHD Ireland or something tweeted out the video, and then they were like, if you want to get diagnosed, contact the.
Well, actually, I wouldn't be too quick to shit on that test. Like, it's actually that was one of the things when I went to see the psychiatrist, that he was able to diagnose me on the day, because he goes, I'd actually done that test, and I had because I'm so nerdy about this stuff, like I had it actually saved in a Google Drive folder with all the answers, so I was able to like show him right there and then, and I was like, I'd gotten like, I think there's 51 questions, and I was like 42 or 43 of them.
Yeah, I was close. Not as high that, but I was close enough.
But this is the thing, is that score would have been higher a couple of years ago. Like, because this, again, part of my trying to figure this stuff out. Like, do you remember I got real pissy with you for when you suggested I was messy?
Oh my God, yeah.
got really annoyed at you.
I know. I told you that you struck me as someone who'd be messy, and then you were like, which to be fair is such a random thing to say, but I think we were talking about your apartment, and I was like, tell me now. I was like, this is just a guess, but you just strike me as someone to be a bit messy, and you were so annoyed.
I was so annoyed because I used to be really messy, and then that was like one of the things which I'd really worked hard on was like, I'm going to have my space organized.
So then arguably, was I wrong? Because you've actively tried to change it. It was your natural inclination.
I'm a neat guy. I think you just thought it messy because I don't spend money on expensive tag gear.
No, probably just because I'm sexist. Like,
maybe.
Single guy, definitely messy.
No, my apartment's very clean. Everyone, no one needs to know that, but it is. I'm definitely. I share the apartment. I'm definitely the cleaner housemate. So.
Okay, yes. So actually, what I'll ask you before we finish up is, so right, I took the test. I got a score. I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have checked, but remember it was high enough. Mm-hmm. So what would I do next if I wanted to go and get diagnosed?
Do you think you're being held back by this? You know what I mean? Because you might have ADHD, and if it's not really impacting on you, like the drugs, when we actually maybe we should talk about it. The drugs can be like pretty hard, and there can be like consequences to them. Like so that's worth considering. But then if you do want to get it like checked, you got to go see your doctor, and your doctor refers you to.
Oh, it's a GP, really?
Well, the GP then refers you on to
okay.
Psychiatrist or like
well.
us. Yeah. So yeah, and that was actually, and again, that was like, see, this is the problem with these things. Like it's like I was only able to afford to do therapy because I was in a job where I was being paid well, and that kind of led me to this. And then like even the ADHD meds in themselves are quite expensive, and you know, like so it's one thing that I think is like if I was in a different socioeconomic background, I probably wouldn't have ever figured this out, and I probably wouldn't have access to any of these things, which is quite sad because like there's probably lots of people who, you know, feel similarly frustrated and just don't have access to, you know, well, there is public access, but it just takes a lot longer. I was just looking.
Well, yeah, but also, I guess if you don't know you have it, like they may not know what to look for. They may not. Yeah. They may have been like you, just trying to figure it out for years. Yeah,
and some doctors are more suspicious of it than others. You see, it has somewhat of a bad name, I think, because in America they're almost certainly over medicating children.
And this is the thing. So I wanted to say to you earlier is that in my school when I was growing up, I grew up in Mayo. It was a rural school, right? And any of the lads who like did anything bold was like, oh, ADHD. Like I remember a lad, and I've made a joke about it several times on my channels, but he set fire to the toilets. And he was always doing stuff like that. And he was like the ADHD person, and it was like a bad thing. It wasn't ever talked about in a positive light, or a light that is anything other than destructiveness. Yeah. So that's, I guess, I think does have a bad name, and it definitely had a bad name when I was younger, I think. And
do you think he had an ADHD diagnosis, or do you think that was just what people said because he was so unruly?
I would very much doubt he had a diagnosis, but that's a guess.
Yeah, because I think, and that's the kind of sad thing about it is that there's an unruly child, and then there's a child who has ADHD, and the other thing is they all don't have the H, because.
Yes, so this is the thing. There used to be ADD and ADHD, wasn't it? And then it was like there was this belief that ADD was just where you couldn't concentrate, but ADHD was where you set fire to toilets, for example. But now it's all under the one umbrella, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know the rationale where they merged it. I guess it's probably just easier to, because I think it's probably treated the same, ADD and ADHD, but it's all called ADHD, and just not everyone has the hyperactivity. I definitely had the hyperactivity.
Did you? Because I was going to ask. I was like, I don't know whether you have the hyperactivity part or not.
You don't think so?
No, I don't know.
Always doing stuff. Always on the move. Can't ever stop. Like, do you ever notice?
Yeah, well, no, I just never noticed it. Not to an extent that isn't a normal amount of.
Well, like I'm not like
crack.
Like I'm not compulsive. Like, but I think I'm always searching out the. And particularly as a child, I was like, God, like I just think like the stuff like the. It's just funny, like the stuff like my parents and that probably would have like had to put up with, just unbeknownst to them, like that this is why I was behaving like this. But I was always getting into trouble, always breaking stuff, always like having run-ins with the neighbors. Like it was like, yeah, and it's same in school. Like it was just always like that. And that was the other thing. Like in school, like I used to get myself in so much trouble in school because I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. And that's another thing with the ADHD. You just have no impulse control. And that was something that was again something I struggled with up to my 30s, where I was like, if I wanted to buy something, I'd just buy it, and I'd like suffer the consequences.
A bit later, yeah.
Yeah, now when I look back on Vipassana, where it was like, 2 weeks of silence and meditation on fucking ADHD, like I should get a medal or something. Like that's like there's like literally no worse environment I could have been put in for like.
You put yourself in
I put myself in it, yeah, but like for 2 weeks with like nothing. And my thoughts just flying around my head. Like I was like,
So for
Jesus.
anyone who doesn't know what he's talking about, I'll put a link in the description to the first podcast where you talked about your silent retreat for 2 weeks. But yeah, now that you mention it, that must have been horrific.
Yeah, like total torture. And this is other stuff, like I mentioned, like the guitar effects. This is one that actually kind of now really hurts my feelings. Like, so I played music. It was like, so when I was coming out of school, I was doing sport and I enjoyed it, but I just couldn't apply myself to the lifestyle of like training and sleeping and like looking after yourself. So I just couldn't get my head into that. And I probably had some ability, but wasn't able to realize it because of that. Then kind of I started doing music, and I kind of did music in my kind of mid to late 20s, up to maybe probably finished when I was 30, 31. And the main reason I stopped was that because I couldn't apply myself to it in the way I wanted, I would just convince myself, well, this is obviously something I'm not passionate about. Because if I was actually passionate about, I would be doing. And I'd hear about like other musicians who'd like, every day would do 2 or 3 hours practice. And if I did that in a month, I was doing well. And a lot of the time, how I was able to practice was I'd buy a new guitar effect, and then
you want to use it, yeah.
Figure it out, the new toy, and then the novelty of that would get me doing stuff. And it was like, and that just became like incredibly frustrating. That whole, because I just couldn't. And then it was I just was like, oh well, you're obviously, this isn't your passion, because if it was your passion, you'd actually. And this was the thing I really kept looking for. Is like, I just need to find that thing,
the one thing, yeah.
And that'll all make sense then. And that's like something like maybe I'd like to go. I probably won't go back to it the way I did, because it's like. It was great fun, but like I'm probably at 30 not going to sit in a van and drive to Spain and other places, you know what I mean? Like, but stuff like that, like which is kind of like it's upsetting in one. Well, it's not upsetting. It is a little upsetting. Like I guess it is, because I always felt like I could have done more with things like that, and because I couldn't apply myself, it's like, oh well, this isn't your passion. And the people who are actually applying themselves, they're doing it because they're passionate. And it was like, well, actually no, there's probably more to it than that. Yeah.
Turns out, yeah, there was more to it.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So is there anything else you would like to add before we finish up?
No, I just again, like if anyone from work is watching this, look, I'm doping, yeah, but you know what? Like you've all been we've had a good last 6 months in work. That's a lot of that's on the back of my work. So unless you want to hand back in those bonus checks.
Do you think any of them like you enough to watch 45 minutes of you talking?
No. They talk about you in work from time to time.
Fuck off.
Yeah, from the time you played tag for us.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Good or bad?
No, they're just like, I don't think they've ever seen someone that competitive over what's basically a drinking event for the media agencies.
I was really reining it in that day.
For me. Something set you off. Oh no, it was the game against, we won't name the publisher, it was a game against publisher that nobody likes. And you
my God.
Booted the ball.
Yeah.
You booted the ball to the guy, recovered it, and then ran down the pitch and scored. And it was like, but the whole time, like, with just anger, like it was like.
Yeah. Oh, it's because on kickoff he made a joke about the way I was standing. Yeah. And I can't even remember what it was, and I was like, "You're dead."
Yeah. But sorry, you see, again, I was about to make a point there and immediately just go off on a tangent. Welcome to my brain. No, just the thing is, like, I'd feel great. You don't even need to get in touch with me on social media because I won't check it for months. But if someone did see this and was like, "Oh, that actually sounds like that might open a door for me," because like it's like, as I say, like the last 12 months have been like I've never been happier. Like I know it's like, sorry, that's not very funny, but it's like, but it's true. Like I just like things are going well at work. I've got back to college. I'm loving being in college, and I'm doing a course that I never would have thought I could do, because it's like I'm doing psychology, which is actually more interesting in the context of this. But it's one of those courses that requires a lot of reading and writing and stuff. And that was like, I would have always picked the courses where, you know, you can dawdle with things. You don't like, there's not like hard graft through the research and stuff. But you know, that's great. Obviously, you know, I'm in a relationship now that I'm really happy with. Yeah, she's obviously worried that I'm only in it because I'm doping, but and she's not. She's made that joke. She's made that joke, but it's not. Because, and actually, the big thing on that was that actually, I'd say the years of going to therapy kind of like was kind of putting me in a space where I just needed to meet the right person now, and that would have been okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so it's been like it's amazing. And as I say, like I went to meet the friend who got the diagnosis and the prescription for Ritalin this week, like the day he got it. And like the thing, that's what I was saying to him. I go, look, this doesn't define you, but it might actually be a key to unlocking a version of yourself you're happier with. And, you know, I was like, when I was younger, like my GP tried prescribing antidepressants and I wouldn't take them. I was so scared of them, even though, like, you know, some troll in the toilet telling me some powder in a bag, and I'm like, can't get it up my nose fast enough. But the doctor wants to prescribe me a pill, and I'm like, no way, man, no way, you're not going to control my mind. But
Yeah, the man who went on a weekend away with strangers to drink
this
DMT out of a teacup.
Well, this is the thing, but I don't even drink anymore, and like, you know, I don't do any of that stuff anymore, and like, it hasn't, like, I don't think they've changed how I apply myself, but it hasn't changed me, I don't think, as a person. I still feel the same. I still think my brain still works in that weird way where it bounces around the place. It just, the big difference is now when I need to apply myself, I actually can. And that's like, it sounds so simple, and it's so, if you don't suffer from ADHD, it's so hard to explain like what that's like. But like, yeah, it's been like, as I say, last 12 months have been just amazing. And if this helps anyone else, that's great.
Thanks
cool.
so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, cool.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Fanj and I are friends in real life. We also have a friend called Neil who's also been on the podcast, and you've now been on the podcast more than Neil, so you win.
I was going to bring that up. I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what, I'll just message him privately.
I was thinking in the car on the way here, I was like, I'd love if one of their podcasts got 1 million views, and then because neither of you'd ever let it go, and it would just give us so much material to go with for years. Like, imagine if this just got 1 million views. Imagine how much you'd rub it in Neil's face. It'd be amazing.
Okay, so if this gets 1 million views, I'm going to set up a Patreon account before this goes out. €1 per watch.
Because that's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, just buy me like a cup of coffee per watch then, like €3. So.
Fan John Kofi.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Kofi. That's the thing too.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for watching and listening on the audio platforms. We're on the podcast is on YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and other places. I don't know why you would need Spotify. After that, I don't know what you'd need, but it's there. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the patrons. Use the affiliate links, please, to keep supporting the podcast, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by The Shift. For more like this, check out theshift.ie.